Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kim Schmidt, Managing Editor for Farm Equipment Magazine. Welcome to our latest webinar. Today's webinar is brought to you free courtesy of the Western Equipment Dealers Association's Dealer Institute. The Dealer Institute provides solutions and resources for growing your business and people while improving operational and financial efficiencies. Today's presenter is Larry Cole, the founder of the consulting firm Team Max and a trainer with the Dealer Institute. He specializes in improving leadership effectiveness and teamwork while fostering the fact that frustration is your best friend. He created the Team Max Advantage methodologies to measure behavior change in real time. Before we hand things over to Larry, I've got a couple of housekeeping items to go through. On your screen, there's a white arrow in an orange box. You can click on the arrow and choose question to open up a question field. That'll allow you to submit questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll look to answer as many questions at the end of Larry's presentation as we can. If for any reason your internet connection or even our connection should happen to fail at some point, and it looks like the webinar has been interrupted, just go back to the email you received telling you how to join the webinar, and you can re-enter that way. And a little different than some of our previous webinars, we're having a few technical difficulties, so we're running Larry's presentation on our end, so he'll be letting us know when to advance things, so just bear with us a little bit. With that, you can take it away, Larry.
Hey, thank you, Kim. Hey, I want to thank everybody for being with us, and I want to apologize for what Kim just talked about in terms of our technical difficulties. So Kim is going to be advancing some slides, and we're going to try to do this in synchronization. So we are going to talk about employee motivation. Now, let me also say that Kim, before we get into it, supplied a lot of questions to me that you guys had submitted. And during the course of our conversation today, I'm going to try to answer a lot of those questions. So if you go, Kim, to that slide that says just a little bit about me, as Kim just said, I'm speaking to you from Conway, Arkansas, about 80 degrees here, which is abnormally warm, as you can imagine. But I've been working in your industry for about 10 years now, and I've been working in the poultry and agriculture area for a good 20 years. So our agenda today is we're talking about the impact of money, and we're going to talk about that. But the focus, as you're going to see as I go through, is that the things that you and I can do to help other people to become motivated are free. It's a matter of how we are going to interact. If you take a look at that slide that says real power comes not from forcing people to do what you want, but from changing the way people think so that they want to do what you want. And I'm going to show you how to do that. All right. Several of you also asked questions about coaching. How do I coach bad attitude? How do I coach somebody who is not motivated? I'm going to also, when I get to a change slide, I'm going to try to address your questions directly. So if you take a look at that slide where it says employee performance, you'll see that I'm looking at a normal shaped curve. And if we take a look at different categories of employees, we see that over here on the left, we've got some folks that are just dead. Then going to the right, I've got another category for job. There are some of us who they just want a job. They want to show up for work on time. They want to get out of there on time, and they want pay. They just want a job. Well, in that category, there are two subcategories. There are some people who are just like I described, but they underperform. There are other people like I described are meeting or exceeding job expectations. They're performing. There's another group as we move to the right. They're there for a career, all right? They're there to maximize their potential, to become the best version of themselves that they possibly can be. They love what they do. They really enjoy it and see it as an opportunity for them to continue to developing their skill sets. Then there's another group over here on the right. You see purpose. I also will use sometimes the word calling. it's just that we were born to do this. This is our purpose in life, and it's almost as if I enjoy it so much that I would pay you for letting me be here. All right. So as you're going to see, if you look on the left-hand side, I look at money, and I'll show you a slide about money in just a moment. But the impact of money is more important for people who are dead and some of those folks who are there for a job than those of us who are really there to maximize who we are and where it is that we're going. Our real challenge as we work with people is to move people to the right. All right, we really want to move people into the calling stage and to the right. Now, when we do on-site work, that's a couple hours worth of discussion, and we don't have time to do that today. But I'm going to show you some things that will help to do that. If you look at the slide, we can't motivate people. We help them decide. Oftentimes, when I'm on site or we're doing a public class, and this has been true for 30 years, I've always asked people, and how many? All of you who believe that you can motivate somebody, raise your hand. And probably 95% of every crowd will raise their hand. And then I have to tell them the truth. We can't. Motivation comes from inside of us, inside of somebody. I can't motivate you. You can't motivate me. And the reason for that is you and I have freedom of choice. We make that decision of how motivated we want to be. I can't force you to be motivated, nor can you force me. But we can do a lot of things to help other people to decide to become motivated. So we're talking about a culture here inside of your dealerships so that we can actually help people to make the decisions to be motivated. Let me give you an example. I'm now working with inside of a dealership, and John's always a favorite name to use whenever we're talking about somebody we want to keep confidential. So let's call this guy John. And we were having this conversation, and same thing we're talking about right now, employee motivation. And what he was complaining about was, why in God's green earth, Larry, do I have to keep telling my people over and over and over and over to do something? Well, when we got right down to the bottom line, what was going on with John was a walking encyclopedia. He just knew everything, and he enjoyed the fact that knowledge was power for him. So when we got into the dynamics of it, we found out that he basically taught his people. He had 17 service techs, as I recall. He basically taught his people every time they run into a stumbling block to come to him and get an answer. He psychologically enjoyed that, all right? And we had to help him to overcome that before he was able to really work with the fact of empowering people and encouraging people to come up with their own answers and get people to think. And you're going to see that I'm going to talk about getting people to think before we are through here, before we're through. If you take a look at the slide, a lot of people throw dollars at people's problems, people performance. And I hope you're not doing that. That is exactly the wrong thing to do, is to throw dollars at people and expect higher performance. There are just so many other things that we really need to do. And over the years that I've been in business, I've been asked multiple times to come in and work with a given department or work with an employee on issues associated with motivation. Guys, a lot of people don't like to hear what I'm about to tell you, but that's not the first place that I look. The first place that I look is, what is that supervisor doing that's creating the environment that's enabling these people to either be not motivated or underperforming? The first place we have to look in is the mirror. What am I doing that's creating this kind of work environment? Let's look at that slide about thoughts about money. You're right. There's a certain percent of us that's going to be motivated about money. That is true. Okay, if you take a look at that normal curve, there's going to be a percent of those, and I've already showed you a lot of those will come from the dead and the job category. But having said that, let me also say there are a lot of peak performers who are really motivated by money. I understand that. And as we know, and somebody asked a question about, are we going to be able to deal with a lot of incentives for salespeople? And no, we're not going to be able to do that today. But I will say that I know that there are a lot of salespeople who are really motivated by money. I've got another company, and we have salespeople, and I know some of those guys are really motivated to make as much money as they possibly can. But that's a smaller percentage when you take a look at the company as a whole. So if you look at that slide that says more thoughts about money, you can see I've got numbers ranging from a -3 to a +3. And what happens is this. If I feel that I am underpaid $1, that's going to result in a certain amount of energy, intensity, frustration, if you will, and I've got it labeled as a -3. I think you can see that on the chart. So now if we turn that around and we give people an increase of they're being paid now over $1 an hour than what they should be, you'll see that the impact that you're going to get a little honeymoon effect, but you're never going to create as much excitement as in those situations where people feel like they're underpaid. Just remember, money is more of a dissatisfier than it is a satisfier. I have to feel like I am being compensated competitively, all right? But in terms of long-term performance for most people, there's going to be other factors that are going to contribute to motivation. But the point of, could also say this, but this is not true for our industry. I've worked in a lot of poultry processing plants, and these people are just standing in line and doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again for shifts of 7-8 hours. Now, those people, money is much more important to them than the worker bees that are in the dealerships, trust me. All right, there is the carrot and the stick. And I've given you a couple books to take a look at. Lead for God's Sake by Todd is a good book, as well as Simon Sinek. If you're going to read one of the Lead for God's Sake is the easiest one to read. Simon Sinek, though, offers some really, really good stuff. But we know the carrot and the stick. If you do something bad, we're going to punish you. If you do something good, we're going to give you some rewards. We're going to tell you we're going to give you some money or something. And there are people, the reason I'm showing you this slide where it says effective recognition for the carrot principle, there are people, I want to be fair to people who are strong advocates of the carrot and stick philosophy, and Gostick is one of them. He's written a couple books associated with the carrot principle. And for those of you who want to learn more about the carrot principle, I would strongly encourage you to take a look at some of Gostick's work, because the slide that we've got up there in front of you right now talks about the fact that he believes that if we use it right, it can improve morale, lower turnover rates, and you can read all of that. I don't need to read it for you, okay? But all that costs money, all right? And then there's a lot of things that we can do that I'm going to show you that it's not going to cost you a dime. Here's the critical factor, and this is also a factor in coaching people. For those of you who asked the question about coaching people, watch this material very carefully. You see over here on the left-hand side, I've got what's referred to as a comfort zone. And I also want you to look at that comfort zone, and you see there are more frowny faces than there are smiley faces. And the point I'm making is, if we want people to leave the comfort zone and start doing something differently, they have to recognize that there is a need to change. That need to change is based on the fact that the intensity, the energy associated with the frustrations exceed the energy associated with staying the same. That energy is used to push people out of the comfort zone. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist by any shape of my imagination, and some of you probably would agree with that, just even based on the brief conversation that we've had thus far. But I've been told it takes more energy, the first 6 feet of a space flight, than it does for the remainder of the flight. The reason being, of course, is got to get all that dead weight off the launch pad, and there's gravity trying to hold it on the launch pad, so it takes a tremendous thrust. Well, when we want people to change, we have to create that tremendous thrust. All right? And that's how you do it. We help people to understand there's more frustrations or associated with the disadvantages associated with the comfort zone than there are advantages. Now, let's go to the other side. You see, I got the new, whatever that new is that we want people to do. And you see, now I've got it just reversed. I've got more smiley faces than I have frowny faces. And what we're meaning by that is there are more advantages to the new behavior than there are disadvantages, okay? It's just like the same process where you try to sell a piece of equipment to a farmer. We're trying to show him that this piece of equipment has so many advantages and benefits and values to them that they just suck money right out of their pocket. Speaking of that, all of us have purchased things that just sucked money out of our pocket. We bought things that have exceeded our budget. It just sucked money right out of our pocket. The reason for that is the advantages, the benefits of the new become such a strong magnetic force, we just have to have it. All right, if that pulls creates another energy source, so let me also point this out while we're right here. If you would, wherever you're sitting, if you would visualize laying on the floor a 20-foot piece of rope, you've got to take it through the door in your office. You can't pick that piece of rope up. You cannot put it on anything, but you've got to get it through that door. Now, you might try to start pushing it, but ultimately what would happen? You would pull it. There's a very important illustration there. The pull is much more powerful in the long run than the push. Remember that. The value, the benefit that we get for using a new behavior is going to be stronger than the push. All right. If those were the two energy sources of change would be easy, but we know that's not the case because change takes hard work when we're working with an employee. And I'm going to give you an example here in just a moment. It also takes some time. Sometimes there's even some fear associated with people doing some things. Not everybody in the organization wants to change. And just recently, my friends, it used to be that we thought that the majority of the resistance for change was psychological. Well, we now know there's a field called neuroscience, and we now know that there's also a physiological base. I'm going to ask everybody to do something for me. All right, I want you to clasp your hands. Just clasp them. Now, I'm one that puts my left thumb on top. Now I want you to reclasp them and put the other thumb on top. All right, and you feel it's awkward. Sometimes we even struggle doing it. But here's the point that I want to make. When I put my left thumb on top, that is a neural highway that's been developed over time. It's very, very strong. The reason that the other, when you reverse that and it feels awkward, is because that, though you could do it, it's not a very strong neural highway. As a matter of fact, your brain is saying there is something wrong here, so you need to get out of here to protect yourself and reclasp your hands the way you normally do it. All right. So that's something we have to pay attention to when we're coaching people to change their behavior. And I'm going to just hold on a second. I'm going to get to that because I'm showing you this slide for a couple of different reasons. But when that stuff hits, you see the push going back to the comfort zone and you see the pull going back to the comfort zone. We now have diametrically opposed energy sources and we become confused. Now, I'm showing you this material for two reasons. First, let's talk about motivation. A lot of people will tell you that a lot of people don't like change, and there are a lot of people inside of dealerships that will say, "We've been doing this for 25 years, and it's worked every time, and we should continue doing it." I was in a dealership, and they were struggling with with the status of their back order parts. And so I asked them, well, how do you do this? Well, show me, how do you handle it? And they took me down a long hallway. And along the side of the hallway, this is where the back order parts were all laid out, so that the salespeople or service techs, whomever, had to come in to see if their part came in today. I asked them, hey, why have you been doing it this way? And you know the answer. We've always done it that way. So when we are talking about change, there are multi-phases of change, and I don't have time to get into all of those either, but here's just the point I want to make with this slide. If we want people to be motivated, we must explain to them the reasons for changing, all right? They've got to know the why. The first question people will ask is, why are we doing this? And oftentimes, middle managers will say, because I'm told to, or somebody upstairs above me has dictated it, and this is the way we're going to do it from now on. Well, none of us like to be told what to do. Very few people like to be told what to do. I would agree by personality, some of us like more structure than others, but most of us don't like it. We want to be in control of our own destiny. We're just hardwired to control our own destiny, so we want to control our own destiny. So we have to explain people, help them to understand the why we are changing, all right? Critically important. Now, here's the second point. There's a reason I'm showing you this slide. Let's talk about coaching for just a moment. I can't tell you the number of times that I've talked with somebody, how do I coach somebody who's got a bad attitude and help them to have a more positive attitude? Or it's a parts guy, how do we motivate a parts guy so that they can put a smile on their face, so that they act as if they are actually enjoying in greeting the customer, okay? How do you get that done? Well, all of us can have a positive attitude. All of us can smile and greet a customer. So here's what has to happen. Now let's look at this slide. In my comfort zone, I'm not a good person at smiling, all right? And so it's in my comfort zone is one of not smiling. So now what has to happen? But we can smile. So what I've got to show people are, what are the advantages and disadvantages of not smiling? And that person has to understand that. The advantages and disadvantages of not smiling. And what I have them do is to actually pull that information from their head so it comes out of their mouth as opposed to mine. The other thing is, we talk about the advantages. What are the values? What are the benefits to smiling and greeting a customer that's walking to you? All right? They have to understand that. They have to be the pull. Now, what I had a slide, I put another slide in this morning that I was going to show you, but you're just going to have to write some things down. In order for that parts guy to go from being more serious and less smiling to being more smiling, then that person has to understand, I've got to accept responsibility for my behavior. I'm the one that's doing that. I can't blame other people for that. I'm the one that's making this decision to be solemn and not to smile. All right. The second thing is, they have to understand that just what I pointed out to you is they have to recognize that there's a need to change. And this is true for every personnel issue that you're going to have. They need to understand that there's a need to change. And even that bad attitude, they have to understand that there are more disadvantages of having a bad attitude than there are advantages. All right. Then they have to be able, of course, to do the desired behavior, and they have to see the benefits associated with doing that desired behavior, the values. And yes, there are times when job security is going to be a disadvantage over there if they stay that way in the comfort zone, and job security can be important as we help people to develop new behaviors. But I want to get a little tighter with you now. We have to build a system. We simply can't talk to somebody and expect them to change their behavior from here on out. All right. I hope not to get too technical with you, but we also know from a neuroscience standpoint that when a behavior is automatic, there's very little brainwave activity between the stimulus and when we emit that behavior. All right. When we're helping people to change behaviors, it's the same situation. The parts counter guy is behind the counter, and the people are coming in, so it's the same situation, but we want a different response. So when they're practicing that new response, there is a tremendous amount of brainwave activity showing you that it's taking effort in order to practice that new response. So write this down. We have to practice. We have to practice and practice, and we practice again, and we practice, and we practice, and we practice. We have to make it a strong behavior. All right, that old behavior never goes away. It's always there, but we have to practice the new one. So here's what I've done. Here's the system. So let's just talk about the guy with the bad attitude. We've been talking to the gentleman or the lady, whichever the case might be, and we ask them at the beginning of the day, we're going to have a good day or a bad day. So a good day is they're going to have a positive attitude, all right? Now, during the course of the day, if I see them have a positive attitude, what must I do? I need to go over there and pat them on the back and give them some immediate reinforcement for that. And if I see that bad attitude sticking its ugly head out again, then I also have to remind the person, hey, we're going to have a good day or a bad day, all right? Just a little friendly reminder. Now, again, I may have to check with that person at noon if I haven't seen the person during the course of that day. We've been having a good day or a bad day. At the end of the day, I'm also going to evaluate that. Did you do your best today to have a positive attitude? Remember how I phrased that? Did you do your best today to have a positive attitude? All right. Now, where am I the next morning? You betcha. I'm right in front of that employee again. Are we going to have a good day or a bad day? All right. That's the system. It's got to be a constant reminder. And I can hear some of you thinking, Larry, I don't have that much time. Yes, you do, if you want this person to change their behavior. We just can't talk to them about it and expect a major behavior change. We have to build a system. Now, here's what will happen. As this behavior becomes stronger, then we start pulling the system away. You may not have to meet with them during the course of the day. You may just meet with them at the beginning of the day and then at the end of the day. All right. Eventually, you might be able to pull the end of the day out. All right. So that's what happens. You build a tight system, and then you can remove pieces of it. But again, let me remind you, I'm showing you this slide for two reasons. One, when we do implement change, and you know you're dealing in a world of change, people, please tell your people why. And that will help them to understand and accept things much better. Because you know that anytime people resist change or they resist buying that tractor, they fail to see the benefit for that of buying that tractor at this point in time. And that's what employees are telling us too. All right. So the second thing is I wanted to show you the slides so that you could work with coaching people's behaviors. All right, got some questions for you. What is the number one stressor in an employee's life? And you probably already see up on the slide that the answer is a supervisor. Now, before we go down the next question, let's look at this for just a moment. Not only do we have an impact on the employee, but we have an impact on the employee's family and potentially even extended family members. So it's not just a one-to-one relationship here. It is supervisors also impact the quality of life of their employee as well as family. So it's a tremendous responsibility. What is the number one reason employees leave a company? And that too is the relationship with the supervisor. Most people leave a supervisor, they don't leave a dealership. As a matter of fact, most of people will say, I love working here, but, all right? So let's go to another situation. We're now in a store that has roughly, I think as I recall, 25 employees. And they've had a turnover rate of 35%. So now they're talking with they didn't have a store manager, but they had a store lead. And I was chatting with him with the corporate manager, and he started throwing HR under the bus, saying that we just weren't getting qualified people. And obviously that's a no-no. We don't throw people under the bus. And the corporate manager sat there and said nothing about that throwing HR under the bus, and I talked with the the corporate manager after that, how they enabled that behavior. But here's the point I want to make. This guy was intimidating. The store lead was intimidating. And he was particularly intimidating to female employees, all right? And he had his favorites. And so the favorites liked him, and those who weren't favorites didn't like him. So you see the rest of that story, all right? It's the supervisor who is creating the morale issues in that organization and how that supervisor is acting. So if you go to employee statistics or something on this page, that's extremely important. First, you'll see there are several different people. The Gallup poll, there are other people who will tell you somewhere between 65 and 75% of our employees are not engaged. They're there, but they're not engaged. They're not engaged because of what you were here to talk about, lack of motivation. It's not that they are bad people. It's just that we haven't created a culture for them to become engaged, and I'm about to show you that. Here's a critical factor. The Gallup poll is going to tell you that 30% to 35% of employees will get a pat on the back within a period of 12 months. That means if those numbers hold true for you, 65% of your people have not received a pat on the back in a period of 12 months. And I'm going to make it worse. We just finished working with the dealership, and I've talked with employees that had absolutely no feedback in 5 years. They didn't even have performance evaluations. They had no idea if they were doing a good job or not. Okay? I was in a situation earlier this week where I had an employee say, well, I'm assuming I'm doing okay. And I said, well, how long have you been in this position? And they said, well, I've been here 4 months. I said, you've not gotten any feedback of how well you're doing in that period of time? They said, absolutely none. Because we operate on the assumption that no feedback means you're doing okay. That's not what happens, my friends, because employees' imaginations go wild. If they don't get information, they come up with their own data. So we've got to understand that. Be careful about that. They also will tell you 65% of employees are looking for another job. And one of you actually put in a question there about what can we do to help retain our employees. I'm going to show you. I hope those statistics are not characteristic of your organization. So let's look at something for just a moment. Now you see this full-range leadership model staring you in the face. Whenever we talk about supervisor relationships, there's always two variables that we have to deal with. Being result-driven, you see on the vertical side, and then being people-oriented, you see on the horizontal side, and you see I'm going from low to high on both of those dimensions. And you see that there are 4 leadership styles in that particular matrix, starting with non-leadership, who's low on both, the benevolent leader, who's high on people, low on getting results, the short-term people who are high on getting results, but they're low on people, and then peak performance. This is where you want to be. You want to be a peak performer. But here's what we also know. To be a peak performer, we have to be able to answer these questions. Are people your most valuable asset? You have to say yes. You just have to believe that. Do you want people to develop their potential? You've got to say that too. You got to say yes. Okay. Let's do this. I want you to visualize something for me. I hope you've got a coffee cup or a cup in front of you. I want you to visualize taking a handful of fleas and putting in that coffee cup or a paper cup or whatever you got in front of you. What are those fleas going to do? You bet. They're going to try to jump out of there. Now just do this. I want you to put a piece of paper on top of that cup. Visualize putting those fleas back in there and put your paper on top of that cup. And your fleas will initially jump up, hit their head on that piece of paper, but what do you think is going to happen in just a little bit of time? They're going to stop. You can take the piece of paper off, and they're not going to jump out. Are they using their potential? No. Okay? We have to be very careful that we don't stymie our people. And there are some questions in here about millennials. And one of the things that you're going to know about millennials is They want to be engaged in things. They want to be a part of things. They want to be able to use their God-given talents. All right? They don't want to be thwarted by a supervisor who doesn't recognize their talents. But moving on. Do you want your people and your leadership to be successful? Now, I don't have this to show you, but I'm here to tell you that your leadership is only going to get better when people get better first. We change, and then we bring the organization with us. So the question becomes, what type of leader do you want to be? I could also ask a couple of other questions. Where are you now, and where would other people put you? And the perception that other people have of us, my friends, is much more important than the perceptions that we've got of ourselves. If I was teaching a Site 1 class, I would just reverse that, because we want people to develop their self-esteem and self-confidence issues independently of that. But inside of organizations, whenever we think that we've got an underperformer in front of us, we're going to look through the eyes, the filters, that person is an underperformer, and that's what we're going to focus on. All right? But I'm going to point out a couple other things before you leave. The reason I've got that red arrow coming in from the left and the green arrow coming in from the bottom is to show you that what you and I want to do, we want to be peak performers, and we want to understand where the gap is, where we are on that chart. But here's something, and I'm going to show you more about peak performers in just a minute, so just hold your horses. I will also like for you to know that it's harder for somebody to come from a short-term, that high result, low people manager type to move towards peak performance than it is for somebody who's got good interpersonal and skills and can engage people and to move to become more assertive. It's harder work to get them going from short-term to peak as opposed to coming from benevolent to peak. The non-leadership stuff, they're part of the dead category, and sometimes it's just better to get rid of them. Okay, so here's where we're getting into some additional meat of the situation. Take a look at that continuum, ranging from laissez-faire to intrinsic motivation. Let me just walk through and explain those categories for you for just a moment. Laissez-faire is where we stick our head in the sand. I'll give you a quick example of that. We had a CEO of a dealership that absolutely refused to make decisions, absolutely did not want to deal with conflict. And as a result of that, the organization was just running over with chaos and confusion. Morale and production were down the tubes. They were just political infighting all the time. Now, if I can move to the right, you see I've got two control issues. One is passive, and this is somebody who's working with people, and they're not going to say anything until you make a mistake, and then they're going to take that as an opportunity to crucify you. The person who is active control, this is the person who's going to tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it. This is the person that's control active. This is the person that I was explaining earlier when we were talking about change is going to dictate it. It's going to tell people what to do, which is not good. All right, extrinsic motivation. This is the money stuff that we talked about just a little while ago. All right, and this is the impact of money. Now, the one that we're going to deal with is intrinsic motivation. These are the things that we can do to help other people to decide to become more motivated. And also what we can do is, you recall when we started off, I showed that normal curve with categories employees of bad, job, career, and calling or purpose. We're going to move people to, these are some behaviors that we can use to move people to the right. All right. The question becomes, where are you on this curve, and where would other people put you on that curve? You need to know that. As a supervisor and as a leader, we need to know where we are. There's no way that you can get to where you want to be without knowing where it is that where you are. We've all had times, for those of us who travel a lot, we've wakened up and we're in a hotel room and thought, oh my God, where am I? Well, if we actually lost that feedback system, there'd be no way in the God's green earth that we could even get where we needed to go. You know, we could also look at it this way. Most of us get up in the morning and we're going to go get a cup of coffee or something. But if we didn't have feedback systems working for us, we wouldn't even be able to do that. All right, so we're going to talk more about this. This one is extremely critical, inspirational leadership. People who exhibit high morale and ethics, all right? all of us have known people who will talk a good game, but their behaviors don't follow their actions. And let me also tell you this: in your industry, is probably the industry that's had the most family-related members, family ownerships of any industry that I've worked in the 30 years that I've been doing this. And I have seen this. I've seen that children, because their name is on the company, that they take advantage of that, okay? And they're not demonstrating high ethics. And to make it worse, I've seen situations where the parents won't even hold their children accountable to do what needs to be done in order to be effective. Okay, got to make sure that align our decisions with our vision and our mission. Most of the dealerships that I've been in will have a vision and mission. Most of them simply don't use it as well as it could be used, because it is a very, very strong motivational variable. And by that I mean all of us are hardwired to want to be a part of an organization that is bigger than us. All right. And we also we're hardwired to be forward-moving, going goal-oriented, and we want to be part of an organization that knows where it's going. And we want to talk about the vision, mission, and values during the course of the day. I tell people we have to saturate. This is critically important too, and that is other people are first and me second. You know, I have seen wars between part sales and service, and it has a terrible impact on morale and motivation inside of a dealership. I'll ask them this question: is it normal for us to have that conflict? And they'll always say yes. And I say, guys, it's not normal. We have differences of opinion, but difference of opinion is not a conflict. We have a conflict because because one of us is making a decision to escalate it into a conflict, and it's more about us than it is about the other party. But guys, part sales and service is not there for themselves. They're there for the betterment of the store and the dealership. But let's move on. Humility is absolutely critical. And this is somebody that's got a lot of self-confidence. They respect other people. And regardless of their position or their title, they put their pants on the same way as everybody else does every morning, one leg at a time, or however you put your pants on, okay? But we're just all people, all right? And I wish I had time that I could tell you some stories about that. But I will tell you this one story about a college professor. And for the final exam of this class, he handed out a piece of paper to everybody, and of course it was blank. And he said, look, I've got one question for you on this final exam. You're either going to ace this exam or you're going to flunk it. And he said, I would like for you to record the name of the janitor that's in our building. And you get the rest. You understand the point, I'm sure. Okay. They're also passionate about dealership. Now, I'm not here to talk too much about passion, but it is a motivation thing. But I'm going to tell you. Let's go back to that change chart. We are more passionate about things that we see really value us. So we can regulate passion as we see the values of doing things, the benefits of doing things. That's passion. All right? Let's go to challenge the status quo. This is an extremely important one as well. And now we're putting people's heads to work. We want to get advantage of heads to work. I'm going to go down to where it says challenge each other. 1 + 1 = 3 or more. Physically, you math people will say, Larry, that's wrong. Well, psychologically, this is very true, because here's what happens. When two of us get together and talk, we'll always come up with ideas that we would never have thought about by ourselves. So we want to create an environment of challenging the status quo, because if I would ask every one of you dealerships that are with us this afternoon, if you want to get better, I know what the answer is going to be. Well, we're not going to get better by doing the things that got us here today. If we're going to get better, we got to step out of our comfort zone. We got to look at some other things to do so that we can get better. We got to raise the bar. So we got to get people thinking. We got to get people to come up with ideas. Let me give you another example. I've been in organizations where they get customer service scores. What do they do with them? They proudly post them on the wall. Well, what good is that going to do? you got to put them to work, get people to come up with ideas of what we can do to continue to improve customer service. Now, here's my point. When we engage our people in these kinds of activities, in these kind of discussions, they feel like they're making a difference. They want to be challenged with that kind of information. I mean, this is critically important in order for us to have a motivated workforce. We have to structure their involvement, and this is an excellent way to do things. How can we, what are the frustrations that are operating in our systems, and what can we do to improve them? All right, let's go over to the next one. As a leader, as a supervisor, we're going to run up against some very difficult things, but we always have to come across with confidence. I know this is challenging, but I know we can do it. I know we can do it. We have to look at optimism, extremely important, not only for us as a human being, because I don't have the time to even talk to you about all the benefits of being an optimistic person as a human being, critically important for us inside of organizations, and that is simply looking for the good of everything that happens. It's using mistakes as learning opportunities. We've already kind of have shown you that. But in order for us to continue this improvement, I got to keep stepping out of that comfort zone that we talked about. We talked about a little bit. Everybody wants challenging and meaningful work. They want to feel like they're making a difference. Absolutely critical. That is a critical one. You might want to put an asterisk beside that one. Okay? If I want my people to be passionate about something, I must demonstrate that passion too. All right? I want you to go down to the very bottom one, because when I looked at that this morning, I edited that, and I want you to underline, ask, listen, and use employee input. If you just did one thing, that is the Cadillac. When we use employees' input, what are we psychologically telling them? That they are valued, they are important, they come up with good ideas. And then we want to let other people know that it was Mary who came up with this idea. It wasn't me. And you and I have seen supervisors that other people come up with the idea and they take credit for it. Well, you know what that does to morale inside of an organization. Here's another very important factor that relates to patting people on the back. We know, you see that recognize small wins? We know if you get a big win, you get a home run, it's going to create a lot of positive energy. Everybody's excited about that home run. Everybody's jumping up and down. But I'm going to tell you, it's the small wins that are more important in the long run than the home runs. It's the number of times you get on first base. Okay? That's what's important. We want people to feel like they've succeeded every day. And it's our responsibility to help that. Look what it does to positive energy when people feel like, and I've heard this before, and it's generally coming from a supervisor, a male supervisor who's been supervising now people for some 10, 15, 20 years, and they're going to ask me this question: Larry, do you mean that I've got to tell people they're doing a good job for something that they get paid to do? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. We want our employees to walk out that store feeling like they are valued. We have challenged them today, we've used their ideas, and they feel on cloud nine because they have contributed to the success of the organization today. Critically important, caring about people. You've heard the old cliche, people don't care what you know until they know what you care. Now, you can see what I've got there. I want you to go to the right. I should have been pointing this out in the previous three behaviors. If I would ask every one of them, could you do what I've got listed there, you would all say yes. If I also ask you, what do those cost? They cost you nothing. They are free. It's a matter of using those behaviors every day. Now, how do we eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So here's what I hope you've been doing. I hope you've been taking some notes. And I hope that because I don't want you to I've listed some close to 20 different behaviors that we can start implementing inside of our organization so that we can create a more motivating workforce. All right? But if you start to do all 20 of them at one time, you're going to get confused. So I'm going to ask you to select 1, 2, or 3 of them and focus on that and practice that. Get good at doing that. Then go back to your list and then get another set of behaviors that you can continue practicing and doing. All right? I know change takes time. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to somebody who one time in his life was an extreme introvert. The most difficult class I had in college was speech. I jokingly tell audiences when I deal with this subject matter is that I would have to go to the bathroom several times before I knew I had to give a speech, and I always wore dark pants. That's how scared I was. When I started college, I wouldn't look at strangers. I didn't know how to deal with that. I had to do everything that you and I are talking about. I had to get out and start practicing and practicing. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And I would tell people good morning who didn't say diddly squat to me. And one day some stupid jerk had the audacity to say, well, good morning, how are you? And I didn't know how to answer that because I had not been practicing. So I started going, good morning, fine, thank you, good morning, fine, thank you. And I learned to say good morning, fine, thank you. All right? That was 40 years ago. So, and I have gotten a lot better, but still today, I'm basically an introvert. My wife and I do not go out and go to parties where I don't know people. It's just not uncomfortable for me. Now, I do know that after I've had 2 or 3 drinks, I become more sociable. But until that point in time, it's more difficult for me. All right. I've tried to show you some things that we can do that do not cost you one dime that you can do to help other people to decide to become motivated. And I ask you to circle a couple of them, put an asterisk beside it, but guys, the Cadillac is ask people for their input. Listen to understand that input. Use that input whenever possible. And let other people know that it was John's idea, it wasn't my idea. Always give credit to other people for successes. Effective managers always accept responsibility for failures. They never pass that down line. They're always looking at for opportunities to tell people that they're doing a good job. So we have another 10 minutes or so left in this hour. If there are any questions that you would like to submit, please submit them to Kim, and they'll come in and tell us what it is that what the question is. And then while you're thinking, but some of you may be doing that or thinking about it, just I'll read a couple of them here off this list that was sent to me yesterday. Seems like today we're missing work ethic and drive. How can we motivate people towards those? And that's an excellent question. And the first thing that has to happen is, though, our management structure has to be doing what? They've got to be really demonstrating that work ethic and the drive. Now, if I'm going to work with an individual on that, I've got some individuals who are not doing as well as they need to do. Now let's go back to that change things. Yes. Can I encourage people to do a stronger work ethic? Yes. But what do they have to see? They've got to see the benefits of that. They have to see that in the process of doing it, I'm really helping them. I want them to be challenged. I want them to have meaningful work. I want to use their brain. Encourage people to use the brain. All right. The more they see you doing that, the better. I've told many supervisors, guys, the millennials want the same thing that you and I do. They want to be challenged. They want to be valued. They want to be respected. Here's a big difference. Those of us in my era, we grew up, and most of us stayed with one employer for a long time. Well, the younger generation, they want everything today. They want everything now. And their philosophy is, look, I was looking for a job and I found this one, and therefore I'll be looking for another one when I leave here. So these people are actually teachers. If we just listen to them, they'll teach us some excellent supervisory skills of what we can do to become even better supervisors than what we are today. All right. I've had a couple questions in here about the impact of money. I hope I answered impact of money. Here is really a good one that's also very difficult. How do you coach or motivate the people above you? First, I would say very carefully. Now, there are some people above us, different based on personalities, it would be easier to do some others, but just to give you a general rule of thumb is this. If you can give people ideas that looks like that it came from them, then they're more apt to buy into it. All right? So what I'm saying is do everything you possibly can to look at those, help that people to recognize or to see that the idea comes from them. That's how you coach up. If you've got a really good working relationship, if that supervisor is open to some suggestions, then the supervisor will actually encourage feedback. One of the things that we teach when we're on site is managers need to be sponges. And I've even done this. I've turned the organizations upside down, and I have used direct reports as the teachers for their supervisors. And then we've actually created a system so that we can monitor and quantify the progress that the supervisor either makes or not. Okay? But we know this. The most effective supervisors are constant learners. They're seeking feedback from every source. They're going to listen to that feedback, and they're going to use it. Okay? I tell supervisors all the time, not go to your people and go to other departments and ask them, what am I doing that's creating frustration in your life? What can I do to help you to be more successful? Okay. Now, having said that, I know that any time that we receive feedback or we give people feedback, there's always three options. They can either deny it, they can either accept it and do nothing about it, or they can accept it and use it. Friends, let me give you just a little psychological cue. The more emotionally involved a person is that denies the feedback, the more likely you just hit home. So the more I emotionally have a discharge to deny feedback, I need to be listening to myself, because probably that feedback that I just received is more true than not. Okay? Kim, do we have questions from anybody at this point in time?
We do. We had one just come in. How do you deal with dishonesty in another staff person when the GM believes that person is needed?
Ooh, got another question? Just a joke. Just a joke. Okay, repeat that question for me one more time.
No problem. How do you deal with dishonesty in another staff person when the GM believes that person is needed?
Yeah. Obviously, in order to show them that that there's dishonesty, you've got to have really hard documentation that the dishonesty is in fact valid. All right, whatever that documentation is. You don't go to somebody like that and say, hey, I think John is being dishonest. No. You have to have hardcore data to show them that here's the trend of dishonesty. Now, here's the hard part, Kim. Just because we show them that data, you and I would think that a very ethical supervisor would do something about that. All right? But I have seen instances where that person is a favorite of the supervisor and therefore does nothing. And as we all know, when that happens, it has a complete adverse impact on morale. Am I making sense to you?
Yep,
so
that makes sense
again,
to me.
The thing you've got to do is document that, because you've got to remember something. We've got people here from all over the United States and in Canada. But I tell people, from an organizational standpoint, we're all from Missouri, which is the show me state. You got to have your facts. But then also understand that we may be powerless in terms of how that data are in fact used. And then what happens to us if something is not done, then our morale and production goes down line. Guys who are still listening with us, calculate what it's costing you to operate per hour. And just with the question that was just provided to us by Kim, things like that is costing a dealership some 25% of their operating efficiency and dollar bills. So if you've got a $2,500 per hour cost for your store, then if you're losing 25% of that, you can see that it's costing you a lot of money because of things that Kim just listed in that question, things like that. Any more, Kim? Anybody else have another question?
Actually, we're hit 3 o'clock, so that's all the time we have for today. Today's presentation and audio will be made available on the Farm Equipment website in the event anyone wants to go back and review it. Keep an eye on your email and the Farm Equipment Daily e-watch for more information. On behalf of Larry, the WEDA Dealer Institute, and the entire Farm Equipment staff, thank you for joining us for today's webinar. When you leave the webinar, a short survey is going to pop up. Please let us know what you thought of the live event and if there's any topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Hey, Kim, thank you very much. Thank you guys for listening.